Next question would be why is worship important and why should we worship God? So this is like a beginner question. Why is worship important and why should we worship God?
Okay, so for me, worship is how it's the life that we live, right? As led by the Spirit of God, um, in submission to the Lordship of Christ, to the glory of God the Father. That's the way I like to break down worship. So for me, all of life is worship. Worship is how you show God that, look, all of me is yours. It is the life of obedience to what pleases the Lord, and also the life of obedience to do what you know. Not to do what you know does not please the Lord, if that makes sense. So it's how the very person of God influences the way you do life. The reason I believe that worship is important is because that's how we show that we are exclusively His. You know, throughout Exodus, God says, I am the Lord that delivered you. Worship me. You shall worship no other God but me. Right? That was God saying, the way I know that you're devoted to me is your expression of worship to me. Right? And not just to me, but your choice not to worship other gods. Wow. Right? And not getting that twisted. So for me, worship is how we show we are exclusively His. Worship is also an expression of faith, especially in this pandemic. You know, I'll start like this. Hebrews 11, I think it's verse 4 says, by faith, Abel offered a more acceptable sacrifice than Cain. Right? So for me, in that scripture, is interesting that, you know, one of the main examples, the first example of faith was tied to an offering of worship, a sacrifice unto the Lord. So for me, and then that scripture goes on to say, Enoch walked by faith. Enoch walked with God, or the scripture says it testified that Enoch's life pleased God so much so that he didn't taste death. And then we'll find out in Genesis that it's because Enoch walked with God. So there you see that the expression of worship is by faith. The life of worship is by faith. And then it goes on to tell you that no one can come to God except they believe that He is. You know, so for me, worship is an expression of faith. It's how you tell God that I believe in you and I know that you are able to do all that you said you can do. And then another reason I've got a teaching around this, by the way. So that's I feel like I'm doing my worship academy here. Another reason I believe that we worship God is also how the scripture says it is the whole duty of man. Ecclesiastes, I believe it's 13. I can't remember the exact scripture. I don't have my notes in front of me, but it says that it is the whole duty of man. After all is said and done, the whole duty of man is to fear God, and that fear is broken down to reverently worship Him. Wow. So that's why I believe it's important. So one, we show that we exclusively is. Another reason is that it's an expression of faith. Another reason of that is that it's our whole duty, and we are all created for His pleasure after all.